Today our presentation is called Food Fight, addressing food access in West Louisville and the Russell neighborhood. This is our team that you've already seen around the office, seen around West Louisville with the little notepads, taking down everything. I'm Jack, this is Cameron, this is Issa, this is Parvani. Nick, unfortunately, found out this morning he has strep throat, so he's not going to be able to be with us tonight or tomorrow morning probably, but we've really loved being here for nearly 8 weeks right now. We've immersed ourselves into the community. We've been all around the place, and some of you know like what our program is. Some of you are more unfamiliar with that, so I'm just going to briefly touch on that. We are Morehead-Cain scholars at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, so we're from NC. And this program is called Civic Collaboration, and we have summer programs each summer. This program is about learning how to navigate ambiguity, learning how to be self-starters, how to gain momentum, and do projects by yourself. So we get some vague guidance from the Morehead-Cain program, which is, okay, this summer you all are investigating food access. And then they say, but you decide your deliverables. You have a host organization who will help you, but they're not going to drag you around. They're not going to say, do this, do that. Obviously, we ask for direction, and we're really really grateful to Louisville Forward for their generous help in showing this around. So without further ado, we're going to jump into one of our first deliverables, which we've titled Government Solution Status Updates. This is essentially an update on three studies, three reports that have been made in the past. We are partly doing this because often the reports around food are made and the recommendations are made and they're awesome, but there's no formal way of tracking them. There's nobody necessarily looking at them, okay, ticking them off or not ticking them off. So that's partly the reason why we did this. Another reason why we did this was because we wanted to understand the broader food landscape in Kentucky and Louisville in particular, and to see if we can learn anything which is contributing to a lack of food access in West Louisville. So we want to have a better understanding of where things are at the moment. To do this, we created a guideline. We created a green status, an amber status, and a red status. Green being this recommendation has been fully implemented and there's been considerable progress. Amber meaning there has been perhaps some progress, but there's a lot of opportunity for further development of the recommendation, and red has limited to no progress. And obviously with amber and red, there's some barriers that we want to discuss. The first study we looked at was the Farm to Table study 2008, and we found that there were 3 green recommendations. The first one being hugely successful was the creation of a farmers market broker connecting suppliers to consumers. Louisville received a farmers market grant in 2014 from the USDA, and that has really helped us, or helped the city, have more farmers market and have more people access to more local food. Secondly, there's been farmers rated more meat processing facilities very highly in that report because they felt that there wasn't enough infrastructure to process meats, to process the goods for sale. And so there's been 2 new sort of meat processing facilities. And those first 2 recommendations are really awesome. There's been really considerable improvement, and that's something to really celebrate. A third recommendation that came from this report was let's get more Kentucky produce into Louisville restaurants. And we see this in Harvest, for example, Lily's Bistro, Proof. Those are all restaurants that do predominantly, if not exclusively, Kentucky produce. And in addition to that, there's the Edible Communities, which is a website which celebrates local restaurants, local shops that sell local food, and so that's all contributing to creating a really positive environment around local food. 2 of the amber statuses are agritourism. There has been some improvement and increase in agritourism. In fact, the Office of Agritourism actually lists 268 agribusinesses in Kentucky, which seems like a phenomenal amount, but there is still the feeling that there isn't enough agritourism going on, hence the amber status. Another amber is the desire to increase CSA shares, or community-supported agriculture. In 2009, there were 500 shares for 33 farms, Today, the share numbers we're not sure about, but there are 35 farms that are doing CSA, so there's been some growth, but all of the farms have waiting lists for CSA shares, and so hence why we chose to classify this as an amber recommendation. And obviously one of the big reds is, in the report, was a recommendation for a year-round downtown public market, which obviously hasn't happened, and barriers for that are where are we going to put it, where's the initial investment going to come from, and how are we going to attract qualified vendors to do this. The second study we looked at was the local food demand study of 2013. And these two recommendations are kind of linked, which is to encourage the availability of local food and to better utilize the many vacant lots for vegetable or fruit production. And this came out of the fact that there is 100 million, in 2013 there was 100 million being spent on local food, and there was expressed that there was an additional market for 158 million, for a total of 258 million each year. So there's obviously a huge demand for local food, which isn't being met, and currently there's still market opportunity to gain from that number. And there are around 4,000 vacant lots in 2013 on which people could grow fruits and veg. One of the reasons why this is amber is that there's a policy that helps individuals who want to do agriculture projects on these vacant lots. It makes it easier for them to get access to those lots and to put like high tunnels on the fruit and veg. So there's been some improvement, but there are obviously, and Louisville Grows is doing some really cool work with the community, with refugee and immigrant communities, making use of of that money. And the final study we looked at was the bluegrass barn raising in 2015. We found it was pretty evenly split between green and red. One of the positives was to increase the amount of local food that was available at Centerplate, which is a catering and hospitality company. That has been pretty successful, hence the green status. Another recommendation was to convene dairy farmers and get them, talking to each other, sharing knowledge, organizing themselves in a sort of formal guild. That's been successful. And excitingly, a value-added incubator was another recommendation, and we are actually in a value-added incubator in ChefSpace, opened in November 2015, and they are essentially an incubator for fledgling companies, small, medium-sized companies interested in value-added food business. We've been catered by one tonight, so that's why we decided it's in green status, which I think is really awesome, and we're in one of the recommendations right now. Two of the reds, one of them is a farmers' university, which came out of the desire to educate the next generation of farmers. There are some organizations helping to educate farmers, but generally it's pretty hard to be educated as a farmer if you're not from a farming family. The average age of farmers in Kentucky keeps increasing, and long-time producers are approaching retirement. So this is actually pretty pressing, is a pressing issue. How are we going to educate the next generation of farmers? Where is our food going to come from? And a second recommendation that we wanted to mention that hasn't been really implemented was creating more of an investment culture in agriculture. There was the Venture Well VilCap Clean Tech Accelerator, which is a bit of an agriculture and clean tech accelerator, which is a bit of a handful. But that was a couple of years ago, hosted in Louisville, where for a year long, small and medium-sized businesses in these two areas, clean tech and agriculture, could work on their business and then pitch their business at the end of their year. That was positive in the sense that it helped create more conversation around investment in agriculture, but nothing really concrete came from that. Hence why we classified it as a red. Up next, Cameron is going to be talking about the food asset map.
Good evening, everyone. So we started looking at the scope of the Russell neighborhood, and we decided that while we did know of some of the food businesses that were there, and the grocers and mixed-use places, we wanted to do a little bit more granular type data. And so we looked at doing a product-level inventory. So Nick and I went to every single food business, so there's 58 in the surrounding Russell neighborhood, And we created an inventory of about 28 items, common food items that you would buy. So like, fresh fruit, spices, condiments, meats, all that type of stuff, and went through each store and checked it out. And we were able to, thanks to the help of Andrew, the GIS coordinator for Metro, design an ArcGIS story map. And so we're gonna go through it a little bit. And we encourage you guys to really check this out. It'll be in our report. We'll send it to you, but to be able to look through it a little bit more, because I'm not gonna go through all the writing on the sides and stuff. But what you can see is the store types are shown, and you can basically click on any of the places. So this is, what we wanted to do was visually represent the scope of the need and kind of emphasize some of the severity of the issue. In Russell, there's the Kroger on 28th and Broadway, and that is the only grocery store in the surrounding area. There's mixed use places like dollar stores. The blue ones are the convenience stores, gas stations, that type of thing. Then we have fast food and liquor stores. And you'll be able to see all of our inventory so like, let's do the Dairy Mart. You can see what is available and what is not, based on a certain criteria that we decided. We took it a little bit further, and you're able to select say if you want to see where bread is, you can see exactly where those locations are. Or for example, fresh vegetables is just in Kroger, or fresh fruits, or fresh meats. So you can go through and look through that as well. Is at the bottom. There you go. Yeah, I think there's 8, 9. Yeah. So Esri has a lot of really cool demographic tabs that we were able to check out. Some interesting ones that we found that you could overlay was fruit and vegetable spending. And if I show up, let me see. I can do the legend shows how much you would typically spend. And you can select any of the block groups, and it'll tell you, so like kind of this is like Beecher Terrace area. It'll say the average amount here is spent is 156 in comparison to a total amount of 800 a year, whereas the average just for fruit and veg in the US is 976. There's some pretty cool overlays to compare. Another one I'll show you is unemployment rate. There we go. And so that you can see based off of the legend some of the percents there. A higher one we saw, this was 25%. This is based off of the 2016 census. We then wanted to overlay transportation, so we selected all the bus routes from TARC that go within West Louisville or touch any of the area, and you can select any one of them and see the route number and where it goes. And we wanted to see this. We also included the bikeways. They're in that light blue color. But we wanted to really see where some of these food businesses were in comparison to some of the bus routes, because transportation, a lot of the Russell neighborhood and West Louisville rely on public transportation. This is a really unique feature called tapestry segmentation. It's designed by Esri. Basically what it does is it divides, there's 67 segments that it's made within the US based off of a lot of different socioeconomic and demographic information. So it can tell, even though median income in a college dorm area and the age is really low, it knows that that's a college neighborhood area. That's why that happens. In comparison to rural areas, urban areas, suburban, all of that stuff. And this provides a lot of really close information regarding a certain area. So something we looked up that was interesting, it provides population, median age, median household income, and then you can also look at the racial diversity index. And so if you compare the median age here is 24, but in this block group we thought it was surprising it was 14. We think this is a really cool tool just to compare the area. And it's really interesting if you look into it, all the different types of indexes and 13 main segments that they have. The last map tab that we made is a crowdsourcing map. So we really want to encourage the extension of our project to the greater Louisville area. And rather than going to every store and handwriting all this stuff and then putting it in and then mapping it, there's a really cool software called Survey 123 by ArcGIS, which we've made the survey. And I can show you. And it's literally all of the same tabs that we looked for. And all you have to do is put the exact location of where you are or where the store is, and it will literally pop up on this map. It refreshes like every 30 seconds. And something that's even more unique in comparison to what we had, which were just like bread or eggs and stuff, you're able to, on this map, do like, for example, milk and eggs will pop up, or, canned vegetables. These are just hypothetical spaces. But we wanted to, for next steps, we really wanted to continue that extension, maybe encourage, a SummerWorks employee or someone to go around and map these places, because we think it could be done about 10 times faster than what we did, since we've already housed it. When we're looking at next steps for some other stuff, we really encourage the use of mapping and GIS software to map all sorts of assets, whether this could be in Metro. We think it was pretty intuitive for us, while it took us a bit of time to obviously make all the maps and design the story map to kind of, for our presentation and for our report. We think there's a lot of really unique features, and you could do any type of asset, inventory or whatever. Lastly, we did a price comparison of all the 7 Krogers within the Watterson, because we've heard there's been rumors about price gouging in certain areas. And we went with the same, we did it last week. We went to every store within 2 hours of each other and did it was like 15 or so items. They were pretty common items that you could get. And fortunately, everything was the same price. So that was a pretty good result, because we had been hearing some things and wanted to check that. It would be interesting to see that extended as well to different months, at the start and end of the month, in the winter months, those type of things. Gas prices? No, we did not. I have seen the gas prices vary a lot within all over Louisville, kind of to a surprising amount. So that would be another really good thing to check out, and it would be pretty easy to do it as well. Our presentation, or the remainder really, we're going to be looking at how you could develop a co-op in West Louisville. And we start off with an informational video, because I think that one of the biggest issues that we found was that a lot of people in the area don't know what a co-op is, how it works, how a food co-op works, or a grocery store, that type of stuff. And we have 2 of the people in the food co-op group with us today. And so we basically wanted to create a tool or resource for them or anyone else to be able to look at what a co-op grocery store is and how it could work in Louisville potentially. And so we used a whiteboard and some video editing skills and the audio of Phil Clark over here. And we think you're going to really enjoy the video. I'm just going to wait for the
Today, let's talk about what a food co-op grocery store is and how you can be a part of one in Louisville.
In my heart and in my soul.
Traditional grocery stores, which are typically owned by large corporations, look at very specific statistics when evaluating a neighborhood. When they are deciding whether or not to open up a grocery store, they look at median income of a neighborhood, among other evaluations of purchasing power, and use their own metrics to ultimately make a decision. Unfortunately, for many communities, these conventional methods of evaluating an area leave neighborhoods without any reasonable close grocery options. People in these communities are often left with fast food restaurants and dollar stores, and access to fresh vegetables, fruits, and meats are simply not provided by these stores. Marginalized communities across the U.S. have looked at solutions to this lack of healthy food access to help correct this growing problem in our cities and neighborhoods. One of these solutions is a food co-op. A co-op is any association of people voluntarily united to meet a need in their community through a jointly owned enterprise. So basically, a food co-op is one that focuses on, you guessed it, providing fresh and healthy food. A food co-op is a way to invest money into your own community and become a part owner of your own groceries. Now, let's check out the basic structure of a food co-op. First, neighbors, families, and members of the community invest to become equal owners of the co-op. They then vote and elect a board of directors. This board oversees the organization and makes sure the needs and wishes of the owners are prioritized. The board also appoints a general manager who runs the grocery store and hires additional staff and employees. The board can also control what is being sold, what discounts are available to members, and the prices of the items to ensure that the cooperative is being true to what the community needs and can afford. A food co-op is able to successfully serve a community because it is built by you and your neighbors. Starting, owning, and running a co-op is engaging work, from mobilizing your community to invest in healthy food, to asking your employer to subsidize co-op memberships as part of a wellness plan. In a co-op world, you are a leader. With your support and enthusiasm, a food co-op can open. A huge myth about food co-ops is that the food will be overly expensive and only be economically available to the rich. While there are many food co-ops centered in wealthy communities, these are in fact the exception, not the rule. Historically, co-ops were created for economically disadvantaged areas, and the only reason we associate co-ops with wealth is because the elites control the media coverage and narrative of the issue. There are many food co-ops that have been very successful in mixed-income communities. Cooperatives compel people to drive change in their own communities. This positive action will challenge the distorted image the 9th Street divide has forced upon West Louisville. Food co-ops are a great way to ensure that autonomy and control over an enterprise remains in your community and that your money doesn't leave the local economy. And plus, who doesn't love some fresh ice cream?
Thank you. So we really want to get that out to a lot of people, specifically in West Louisville, because most of the people that we talked to, which you may have found when we did a survey, was that they didn't know what a co-op was. And, to be honest, I really didn't either before I started this. And so, you think about that, and you think if you really want to try to build a co-op and develop that idea in people, you really need to kind of explain what it is, and what better way than to do a video that people can watch. So, yeah, that's kind of the intro to what we're going to continue with on looking at co-ops and
Thank you. Hi, I'm Isa. So I looked a lot at, we did a peer city evaluation, kind of looking at various cities around the country. We looked at Indianapolis, Nashville, Cincinnati, Oakland, Greensboro, and I'm probably forgetting one, but various cities and looking at what exactly those governments have done to support co-ops, but also what initiatives take place in various cities, and just kind of this, we called it the co-op ecosystem, or co-op ecosystem evaluation. So through that, we developed a couple of recommendations that we think could really be beneficial in trying to establish one potentially in Louisville, as well as recommendations for a co-op group if they were to start. So the first thing that we think should really happen, and this is more specifically for on the government end, but is scoping and defining the need of the issue. So in 2007, there was a State of the Food study commissioned, and since then there hasn't really been a whole lot of up-to-date information about exactly what the issue is. And that's kind of one of the purposes of the Food Asset Map, was to get a better picture of what it looks like now, especially with the closures of the 2nd Street Kroger, as well as other grocery stores in the area. So one of the things that we really recommend is doing something like a problem statement. There has not really been, from what we've seen at least, a really succinct statement of the issue, or exactly what is going to happen, especially since the 2007 food study, or especially since the food court debacle happened. And secondly, we request or recommend that this study be updated. Since it was last done in 2007, a lot has changed, like I said before, and I think that it would be really useful to just get a better picture and understanding of what the exact food system looks like in West Louisville or in Louisville and finally, a lot of what we've seen is that the budget specifically of these cities do mention and prioritize food access, and they do this whether it's through goals or specifically stating food access programs, and Louisville does have a lot of support for food access programs in the budget, but there's not, from what we saw at least in the recommended 2018 fiscal year budget, food access isn't really mentioned. One of the requests that we have is to potentially mention it in the mayor's goal number 10, which deals specifically with food-related business. It does talk about developing the food economy, which is wonderful, but we think specifically mentioning food access in this budget could really bring more light to the issue and more awareness, and we suggest doing this by a potential partnership between economic development and Louisville Forward and the city, or the Center for Health Equity. In Nashville specifically, as well as Indianapolis as well, I believe, the departments of public health as well as the departments of economic development in the cities work together a lot on food access because it brings together two very unique perspectives in terms of how food ties in directly to economic development as well as how food is necessary to live a healthy life. And these two perspectives brought together really create not only a more powerful and compelling argument for grocery stores to come or just like for a general food plan, but they also provide a lot more resources to help the issue. And so next I wanted to talk a bit about how specifically this relationship could look. So this, again, like I said, is based off of an evaluation of various other cities and what we've seen the best relationships looking like between the governments of those cities as well as the cooperatives in those cities. So the thing that we suggest for the most part is a mutual accountability relationship. And what we mean by this is both organizations try to hold each other accountable for their ends of the bargain, so to speak. So like we mentioned before, there's a Louisville food co-op trying to start it up now. And for a lot of what we've seen, it's just been difficult to get off the ground for a variety of reasons. But a couple of the suggestions we have to make this relationship potentially work is creating some kind of plan and tandem together, a 5-year plan to try to set out the goals of what the food co-op could look like in a couple of years. This could be done in conjunction with the economic development branch, and we really also recommend the NIA Center potentially become involved with this just because we see them as a really powerful facilitator for this relationship because they have the community knowledge as well as the back-end business skills for starting a business. Secondly, I've looked a lot at the agribusiness loan, and I think it's a really wonderful program for Portland specifically, and I think it would be really cool to see it expanded potentially into other parts of West Louisville, whether that's Russell specifically or whether it's just another program starting, just because there are great spaces like ChefSpace available, but there's not really any specific capital there other than general loans available for businesses overall, but having a specific fund for West Louisville would be a really powerful way to support chefs in ChefSpace. There have been quite a few people that we've talked to at neighborhood association meetings that wanted to start restaurants potentially, and there's not a whole lot of money available there specifically for Russell. So expanding the agribusiness loan program could be a really wonderful way to try to reinforce that. Finally, we've talked and researched a lot about the resurrection of the Food Policy Council. We know that FIN exists and it does a really great job at convening nonprofits and really focusing on collaboration, but we think that having a Food Policy Council directly potentially connected to the government could be a really good way of maintaining this mutual accountability relationship back towards the government. If there are various food nonprofits as well as community members at the table evaluating food policy, we think that's a really good way of engaging the community in just food policy in general, especially since it is such a large issue right now. And like we said before, we're going to get more into this in a second, but talking about the NIA Center involvement in this. Various cities have a cooperative development organ, and Louisville at this point doesn't really have one, and we think it would be really cool to see the NIA Center potentially building that capacity for developing the cooperative or having a cooperative development association. Indianapolis has the Indy Cooperative Development League. Cincinnati has the Cincinnati Unions Cooperative Initiative. and Oakland has Mandela Marketplace, and Louisville doesn't have one, but it's a really wonderful way to try to get a co-op potentially off the ground. And with that, Pavni is going to talk a little bit more specifically about what a co-op could look like based on her research. Thank you.
Hi, so my portion of the presentation was largely based off a conversation I had with Costa at the new Fresh Shop in New Albany. So the next slide talks, but this part doesn't, but it will come. So in our peer city evaluation, one thing that popped up to us was the involvement urban universities have in food security and food access issues. In Louisville, this is a strong suit for them. With U of L, Spalding University, and most recently Simmons College, it has a large base of students involved in food access, food justice, environmental science, urban planning that could sink their teeth into these issues. So to address that gap, we want to propose a food fellowship program largely based off of the Indie Food Fellowship in Indianapolis. So what this program would look like would be 4 or 5 students who are engaged in the issue, spending a quarter of their studies housed in different nonprofits. So the nonprofits we've engaged with are New Roots, Louisville Grows, Empower West, and Food Literacy Project. So New Roots tackles the fresh food, they're on the ground, giving people the chance to pick out their food and understand what it's like to invest in oneself with fresh food. Empower West is doing justice-oriented work. They're getting people to read the right books about segregation and the history of redlining. They've built a strong, powerful coalition of churches, both on the east and west end. Louisville Grows has been doing a lot of vacant lot property usage, and I'm looking at Brianna and listening. And so, but they've been engaged in getting people to grow their own food, and it's an autonomous process. And finally, Food Literacy Project engages in youth activism and education. That Jack mentioned that the average age of farmers is going up, and that's not good. So getting youth involved. All of these pieces are different layers of addressing the issue of food access. And so we propose that students rotate to increase collaboration among nonprofits. This is a problem that we've seen in Louisville, that tends to be territorialism among nonprofits, and they all have their own niches, and they're really good at that. But often they don't talk together, and if they did, it would be so powerful. And it would be powerful because it would create an environment in which a co-op would succeed, and the Louisville Food Co-op Group would have a network of people to pull from and a market to rely on to really take off the ground and succeed. So this is where my conversation with Kasia really took flight. So her conversation showed us that building a co-op is a market growth operation. And it's not only in terms of pure capital and customers, right? You need to grow the market in terms of community input, getting people to trust themselves as people who can contribute to the table. You need to grow the market for collectivism, so collective action and decision making. You also need to grow the market for fresh food access physically and education. So if people can have all of the fresh food they want, but if they don't know how to cook it and consume it properly, it's going to go to waste. So those 3 market growth operational aspects guided us, and we devised 3 strategies that the Louisville Food Co-op Group is implementing but could also benefit from in the future. So the 3 values we drew from that are based on the 7 principles of cooperative economics are community knowledge, collaboration, and integration. So the first strategy is family-oriented meetings. This is the cornerstone of the Louisville Food Co-op Group's future plans for civic engagement. This is a whole new take on what it means to engage a community. So if you involve a family, you not only have the person in the family who has purchasing power, but you also have the kid who's going to eat those vegetables at the dinner table. And convincing the whole family of the power of collective action and purchasing fresh food is a powerful way to get the co-op off the ground. So engaging in those meetings and reaching more people through this style of civic engagement will only be beneficial. This type of meeting will also provide a good validation mechanism for B school students who ultimately will conduct the market and feasibility studies for the co-op group. The community knowledge has to be valued equally to the back-end business training. That's the only way a co-op is going to work. Our second strategy is to kind of facilitate a collaboration with Empower West and New Roots. So we've been talking to Karen Moskowitz at New Roots, and we've been talking to Chris Sanders at Empower West. and to increase that network of churches who will mobilize their congregations to eat healthier and cook better is a good way to empower the nonprofits that are on the ground getting people to eat healthier. Our third strategy is to institutionalize the producer-consumer relationship that will ultimately inform a co-op to make better buying decisions when they get their, when they start selling. And this relationship is captured in the next slide. So we believe that a co-op works at its best when it's serving a community gap. And that gap primarily is nutritionally within our focus. So we propose that the Center for Health Equity conduct a study in West Louisville that identifies specific nutritional gaps in Russell and West Louisville. So looking at Jefferson County Public Schools, looking at summer programs, doing qualitative interviews, contributing to the asset map are all ways to identify what gaps exist. So that's one report. Parallel to that effort, the Community Farm Alliance should be analyzing the scale at which producers and small, mid-scale size farmers are growing. So we know that the market for fresh food is increasing. We've seen that in the studies commissioned years ago. But do we have a handle on the rate at which farmers are producing? If those rates of growth, both on the consumer and producer end, are growing at equal rates, the food is going to be affordable, and that's a big priority for the co-op group. So those reports should be commissioned by those two organizations, and they should ultimately feed into the NIA Center. This is a long-term capacity building strategy, Christy, so it's not but so basically, I think it would be really cool if the NIA Center could look at the gaps that are there nutritionally, look at how the farmers could supply and fill in those gaps, compile that information, and work with the food co-op group so that they can keep their food affordable, fresh, stocked, and accessible to West Louisville. And the NIA Center is so powerful in this regard because it's in West Louisville. It has the community perspective. It is tapped into what the community wants and desires, and it's an economic powerhouse. So. The final recommendation we have to offer in this part of the presentation is how to get small businesses involved in the fight for food justice. So we sat in a meeting with the Community Foundation. Anne is here to join us. And they basically said there needs to be more private sector innovation in nonprofit delivery of food. And then we talked to Karen, and she said, hey, I'm partnering with the janitorial service to get them to subsidize shares for their employees as part of their wellness plan. And I was blown away. I was like, that's super cool. And so I sat down with Christy and was like, what are these businesses that could fall under the same characteristics and category to get the ball rolling? And so we created this mechanism that could be implemented by Louisville Forward to get more businesses involved in share subsidization for New Roots Fresh Stops in the short term and co-op member subsidizations in the long term. So the businesses would come in through the Louisville Forward business database, which is so long, and then community organizations that interface with entrepreneurial people, entrepreneurs. And then the last source would be just incoming businesses that people come across. That database would be collected and sent, just compiled. And then those businesses would be given a survey asking them what do they do to guarantee for their employees fresh food? What does their break room look like? What do their employees say about their access to fresh food? What do they want to do in terms of improving their wellness programs? And based on the surveys, companies that seem like a good fit would then be well on their way to subsidizing shares in the short term and memberships in the long term. This is a way to challenge the insurance industry. Taking more proactive measures to guarantee employee health is a less risky way to ensure employee wellness. Oh, also, so all of this comes together how? We throw models and fancy diagrams at you, but we do believe that the Louisville Co-op should house itself first where the Second Street Kroger used to be. The co-ops in other cities have been most successful because they fill the gap of a grocery store that has left this community dependent on convenience stores. With that fresh food you saw on the map, there's only one location in West Louisville that serves that purpose. So we believe that the first store should be where the Second Street Kroger used to be, and then ultimately the success of that Kroger using family-centered meetings, strong church alliances, education campaigns, and producer-consumer relationship brokerage will prompt the opening of a store in West Louisville, a co-op store. And ultimately, the principle that channels into all of this is cooperation among cooperatives. The store in 2nd Street would support a store in West Louisville through business consultation, produce management, farmer relationships, and ultimately would subsidize some of the costs of the West Louisville food produce to keep that food even more affordable than it already is. So that's a suggestion we have to make. We don't know how realistic it is, but we think, we have powerful people in this room, and we think, it could happen. Yeah, on that note, we have a challenge to the city before we get into some survey stuff to come up with more convening spaces. I mean, you guys, Louisville's amazing for convening. You have the Derby, you have the Muhammad Ali Center. That's only to name a few. But to get more people involved in the conversation and to kind of shed this territorialism is the number one priority to get on the road to success. That we have so many organizations from the nonprofit, for-profit, government side in one room today, and doing more events like this in a productive manner would only benefit a community that has been oppressed for so long, economically and socially and politically. That's all I have to say.
So we also did a survey with three simple questions, and we got this survey out in 4 ways. One of them was we went to the first Russell Neighborhood Association meeting and we handed out surveys there, and afterwards we hung out a little bit with Councilwoman Barbara Sexton-Smith. Across from where the meeting was Elliott Park, and Barbara Sexton-Smith was like, why don't we go over to the park and just interview some people? And we were like, what? Okay, we don't, approaching any large group of people is intimidating, but I guess we've only been here a couple of weeks, so we've heard about the Barbara Sexton-Smith effect, and you can see that in how many much more responses we got with her. Other ways that we did that was handing out surveys in the NIA Center, on a West Louisville mailing list, which was our least successful way of getting out surveys, and also at the Joshua Tabernacle Church, with permission and help from Reverend David Snarden, who helped us hand out those surveys and get them back. So we had a total of 60 right here, and I'm just going to briefly touch on some of the findings that we've had, and in the appendix we have some more breakdown for anybody interested in more of the data, and then we'll take some questions. Our first question, very simply, would you like to see a food co-op in West Louisville? And overwhelmingly, you can see that the response is yes. In fact, 58 out of the 60 people said yes, and 2 said no. And when asked why one of the people said no, they expressed fear of gentrification and any issues that might come along with it. But overall, overwhelmingly, there was a desire for a food co-op. When we asked how often you would visit the co-op, interestingly, we saw that 2 most popular equal options were once a week and once every 2 weeks, with 10% of people saying that they would visit once a month. And anecdotally, we've heard for people who might visit only once a month is because they have access to food banks and other food relief services, which makes it unnecessary for them to visit any often. But we don't know if that's true. We just know that that might be an explanation for what is a pretty low frequency. The final question that we had was how much would you spend each visit, with the options being 15, 20, and 25. As you've seen, the most popular option was $25 a visit, followed by 50, followed by 20, and then roughly 10 to 12% had above $25 for each visit. So we see that it's pretty fair to say that there's a pretty limited amount of resources that would be spent, but the beauty is that there is this survey demonstrates that there is a wide range of socio-economic backgrounds, and the beauty of the co-op is if all backgrounds shop there, it's more sustainable, it works better, and it'll be there longer. And so, like I said, we have some more breakdowns in the appendix if anybody's curious for how much for the $15 category, $20 category, we broke that down into how much they would visit to get more specific data, but that will also be included in the report. So right now we just want to say again, thank you so much. There have been so many people in this room who have been really generous with their time, with their insight, and we literally couldn't have done it without any of you. We've absolutely loved being here for nearly 8 weeks. We will be back. I know Nick is not here today, is really keen to apply to med school here, and he really loved it, and we all did. So thank you so much, and we'll take questions right now too, if anybody has any questions.